So what kept you coming back every day though? It's pretty, I don't want to say it sounds easy, but it's like, oh, you paid off that much debt in 18 months. It's like easy to receive, but like every day, you said you're putting in 10 hours each day. Like you did that today. Okay. What brings you back tomorrow and the next day and the next day?
The muffler salesman, he did it. I heard him speak. He habla inglés. Like he was just a dude, just like me. Probably worse off. He probably didn't grow up with the parents that I had modeling what success looks like. Even like fitness, there's a certain genetic component to. There's just no genetic component to internet marketing. And so the fact that one person did it meant that anybody could do it. It's not like dunking a basketball. The fact that Michael Jordan dunked from the free throw line doesn't mean anybody else could too. But if one guy makes $1 million affiliate marketing, pretty much anybody can. And it was just that. And part of it is like, I would get pissed thinking about failing.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean if anybody could do a thing and one ordinary person did do the thing, and then I, who actually thinks pretty highly of myself for certain reasons, maybe that's a crass thing to say. What would it mean if I didn't do it? Who would I be?
Yeah.
I would have to go back to the drawing board on all of my beliefs about myself and my life. If I didn't do that, I should just stop. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's kind of dramatic.
You ever watch the show Succession? You ever seen that show before?
Oh, I love that show. Yeah, on HBO.
There's a scene in the show where the one guy in the show named Greg, he's like, I'm finally getting paid. I finally got some money, so I'm going to go out to eat. And the guy's like, oh, that's great. He's like, spending some of your wealth, huh? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to California Pizza Kitchen. And he's like, what? And he's like, yeah, the place is amazing. They got the best food. He's like, no. I'm going to show you, what. So he takes him to this nice restaurant and he sits this kid down and he goes, man, he's like, being rich is like a superpower. He's like, and the kid's like, well, I thought that people said, money's the root of all evil, and you're not, you don't want to get too caught up with making money and so forth. He's like, no, that's a bunch of bullshit that a bunch of broke people made up. He's like, being rich is fucking awesome, man. And he's like ordering all this like extravagant stuff.
And they ate the ortolan.
Yeah,
the little bird. Yeah. They put their napkin over their head and they eat the little baby bird whole.
Ooh.
It actually gets pretty dark.
Yeah,
it's so fun. I love that show.
Yeah, that's an amazing scene.
One thing I'm curious about, because I feel like later on we can definitely get into a lot of tactics, because right now a lot of people are struggling with work. They're trying to figure out how to do something online since they have extra time. But for you, Andrew's mentioning, and you mentioned you did 10-hour days. You always had this belief, even when you started piano late in life, you're like, I can do that professionally. So there's this underlying belief in yourself that I think a lot of people don't inherently have. Most people would look at that and be like, I wasn't playing piano since I was 8 years old. There's no way I can learn something this complicated at this late of an age. There's all these barriers that people create for themselves. But it just seems that you constantly don't do that. You constantly don't have those types of barriers. So how can one build that type of mindset for themselves? Because to do any of the things that you teach on your YouTube channel and your courses, you need to have a mindset that allows you to grow. Not one that's saying, oh, I can't be a business owner, I can't be an entrepreneur, I can't play the piano, all these things. How do you build that type of mindset for yourself?
I try not to be irreverent and sort of like diminishing of other people's challenges, because I do recognize, and this is a call to all parents, like give your kid the natural advantage of having had good parents. I had good parents. And they modeled for me some of what you're talking about. So I don't want to take that for granted and be, ungrateful for that. But there's also a point where, I like the way you said it. You said, I don't build those barriers for myself. In other words, it's not that the barrier exists and yours is to tear it down. It's the barrier doesn't exist, so don't build it. That's how you said it. Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, it was like people approach it like, well, how can I learn to tear it down? It's addition by subtraction. It's about not doing a thing. It's not about doing a thing. And the thing to not do, how do those barriers get constructed? How does anything in this world get constructed? It gets constructed through language, right? What you say. Even if you're trying to build a wall, hey, bring that brick over here. Like, it's initiated with language. Trying to build a wall in your mind, it starts with language. So the one thing that I have done obsessively since I got fired from that job when I was 16 years old. And I don't know if it was a coincidence or it was by design, but when I was 16 years old, I got fired from that job. The very first book I read after getting fired was The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And, you know, it's the story of Howard Rourke vision. I mean, I literally can still see the pages, the words on the pages in that book in my mind. And I've reread it since, but only once. And even that was probably 15 years ago. Howard Rourke, visionary architect who builds these amazing creations, but they're not appreciated, they're not understood, and the world seems to be, you know, like this evil orchestration to tear apart his genius and his work, and he just keeps fighting. Finally, at the end of the book, he's seen as the genius that he was, and it's like, I think Ayn Rand's point, I know she gets a lot of flack now because people have really politicized her. You know, it was called the Fountainhead because the human mind, the human will is the fountainhead of all human achievement, right? And just for the record, if anybody's like on a big anti-Ayn Rand kick, I don't agree with her about everything. So like, I don't care if you attack me, don't attack Mark for having me on his show. He's like, oh, he's an atheist or whatever. But so I don't know, man. I just caught fire with that like human beings can create. There's nothing in the world. I mean, even at this desk, right? Like the technology and the wiring and the cameras and the lights and we bottle water in Fiji and ship it to the United States and get people to pay like $3 for that. Like human beings are infinitely and endlessly innovative and creative and cool. Maybe that's not the best example, bottling overpriced water, but like, I don't know. I just said it was almost became like this thing of just like, don't create obstacles that you'll then have to waste energy to overcome and just keep going. A lot of it's kind of like a let go and let God thing too. Like trusting the process. I think when people get in trouble is when they start doubting the process and they start trying to rush or talk themselves out of the trajectory that they're on. But so it's, anyway, I'm kind of meandering. It's about insulating your self-talk. And so saith Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil talks about how, as a parent, you've got your kids, like he always says, it takes 100 attaboys to overcome one what the hell, right? And so as your own shepherd and guide through life, you know, the parent of yourself, you've got to give yourselves 100-to-1 ratio of positive to negative. And I very early on, and the music was a big key to this because the only way I was able to achieve what I did through music, I started saying no to entertainment. I started saying no to media. I started saying no to friends. Like for 3 years, I didn't do much that was fun because I had a bigger vision for what I want to do with my life, which was it wasn't so much a vision, it was an anti-vision of I don't want to get a job. And this is the only path I see. Yeah. But I learned in 3 years what happens when you really, really isolate your influences. You put yourself in like a media, and I mean media as in the plural of all mediums of exchange and communication. You put yourself in a media silo and only let in the stuff that you want in, and then you won't be tempted to build those barriers in the first place. That makes sense? Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's you know, whenever I have friends that talk about their goals or talk about the things that they're trying to do, and like I mentioned, the reasons why they can't do certain things. But when I know more about these people, it, like you mentioned, it always comes down to their parents. Like, and I think a lot of listeners that have kids, you know, we talked about this a lot, but it really is important the type of way that you talk to your kids and you encourage them or discourage them from doing things. Because there's a lot of close people in my life right now that are so much smarter than me. And I know they're so much smarter than me, but it's like the way they talk about themselves doing certain things. It's like, there's so much negative and there's so much, they've put so many barriers in front of themselves, and it's hard for them to get out of that. It almost seems like it's impossible for them to get out of that. So that's super damn important. Yeah. And I love that you use the words encouragement and discouragement. Encourage is to instill courage. Discourage is to remove courage. The root of courage is, you know, heart, core. And when you think about it in those terms, you might think you're doing your child a favor, like you're discouraging them from trying this thing. You're protecting them. What are you protecting them from? Courage? You're protecting them from heart. Like, I think when you view it through that lens, I mean, parents sadly are probably 90% of the challenge that you're talking about how to work through. It really does come down to so often overcoming your upbringing.